What's up, Yardies, and welcome back to the Backyard Variety Tour. Thank you for joining us for episode 19. Episode 19 features producer and distributor and now director Avi Federgreen. Avi is a producer for Federgeen Entertainment, and he has his own distribution company, Indiecan Entertainment, for the film side and Indiecan Records for the music side. Avi has been producing for over 25 years, and he'll have been a distribution company for 10 years in August 2021. The record label, Indiecan Records, is 7 or 8 years old, and he has released over 150 films in Canada, over 70 in the US as a distributor, and produced over 60 films in Canada. He's now a director of a short film and an upcoming feature. He's a wealth of knowledge in the industry. He was an early mentor of mine, taught me a lot, and gave me a start early on. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome my next guest, Avi Federgreen. Where does Motherly fall in? Does that fall into the genre category for an international film?
Well, so Motherly is a film that I produced. We shot it in March this year. It was formerly called Daughters. It's directed by Craig David Wallace, who did a movie called, who did Todd and the Book of Pure Evil. He did the first season of Slasher. And it's an elevated thriller. It'll be released by Raven Banner Entertainment. They're also the international sales company for the film. And so we made that film in March. We literally just finished the film yesterday, and it'll be coming out in festivals in 2021.
I saw the trailer. I actually really liked the trailer. And I spoke actually to Ian Malone, who wrote it, correct?
Correct.
So I spoke to Ian at one of your parties, I believe, last year before all this started. Mm-hmm. And I actually spoke to Raven Banner, I think, that night too. But Ian said that he wrote a single location thriller kind of thing, and that you and he were working together. And when I saw that come out, I was like, oh, well, this is probably the film. And it looked really good. I want to see
it. So Ian is friends with Craig. They co-wrote the film together. They've been friends for a long time. Ian and Craig had been trying to make that film for about 8 years before they met up with me. I was introduced to the film to the filmmaker Craig by Andrew Rosen of Aircraft Pictures, who I've line produced lots of shows for. And Craig and Ian were frustrated. They had this project that they really wanted to make, and that they had gone through a few producers but had never gotten the film made. And so Andrew introduced me to Craig and Ian, and then I read the script. I really liked it. I thought that it still needed some work, and because most of the genre films I make, 90% of them are of the lower budget variety, I said the only way that we could make this is we had to change the script some, and then if once we got it there, that I would show it to Raven Banner. If they dug it, then I would proceed to raise the money to make it. So I met them in January 2019. We were financed in December 2019, and we shot in March 2020. I took a project that had previously been sort of trying to get made for 7-8 years, and turned it around, and we made it a little over a year after I started getting involved. And I produced the film with Laura Tremblay, who is a producing partner of mine. That we have a number of other projects together that we're aiming to make this coming year and beyond. So, and I have a long-standing relationship with Raven Banner, and I have a number of projects in with them that they're interested in making with me, and I'm really good friends with them. I trust them. They're great at what they do, and we have sort of like a shorthand together where I kind of know, for the most part, what to bring to them for consideration, and I prefer having them in the tent. It's because their strong suit is they know what the buyers want, and that they are very supportive of me and the content that I'm bringing them, and we just really work well together. So I'm sort of always on the lookout for content that I think that they would like. If they like it, then it's generally much easier to raise the money to get them made.
So you said it's going to hit the festival circuit, which means it probably won't hit like on-demand streaming services for 2 years.
No, probably 2022 it'll come out, maybe spring 2022. It depends. It could also be the fall of 2021. We have some people already interested in the film that have seen the trailer, that have seen the film almost done. They've obviously seen the poster and stuff. It's generated a lot of interest. We're really proud of the film. I think it's really, really good. I think Craig and Ian crafted a really great script. I think Craig directed it marvelously. We had a Hamilton DP who I've done, I think this was like project number 4 with him, that shot it, and it looks great. And the actors are amazing. And they were actually the same actors that I worked with on a movie called For the Sick and Vicious, which we had made in October last year. It's been traveling around the genre festival circuit and getting huge acclaim. And we shot that movie October 2019 in Guelph. And I'm really, really proud of that film too.
Where did you shoot Motherly?
We shot that in Simcoe, Ontario, just not far from Hamilton. We shot in a house in Hamilton for a day, and then we shot the rest of the movie in Simcoe at this farmhouse / barn area that we found, and really it worked amazingly well for us. And so we were there for we shot there for 14 days.
So was it a 15-day shoot? That's it?
Yeah. And we actually shot 14 of the 15 days and then stopped because of COVID and came back in August to shoot the last day. We were supposed to shoot at the farm, but we shot it in a warehouse space in Hamilton.
Pretty amazing how film has been able to keep churning through all this. Obviously, a lot of more money has to get spent, but it's also created a lot more jobs too. Mm-hmm. But it's funny that it's just one of the very few things that has kept going.
Well, I mean, the industry has taken a stronghold on doing it properly, testing regularly, properly distancing, putting people in pods and distancing, PPEing everybody to the hilt. We're doing it right, and we're doing it safely, and you're not hearing tons and tons of shows shutting down for weeks on end, maybe a day or so while they investigate a potential issue. But you don't really, shows just keep going, and they're going safely, and there's not widespread, infection and stuff like that. So, but yeah, it costs a bunch of money to do this kind of stuff, and it should. And it, if you can't afford to do it, then you just don't do the show, because you have to do it safely, and you don't want to we're making a movie, we're not doing brain surgery here, so you want to make sure that you're protecting the people that are working on the show. And the shows that I do, they're a family. They're not just another crew member. Like we collaborate. They're part of my lives, not just beyond the movie, right? So I take it very seriously.
Who runs your social media accounts?
So for me, it's me. For Avi Federgreen, it's me. For Federgeen Entertainment, it's me. For Indiecan Entertainment, I have a amazing social media guy named Johnny Bunning, who handles a number of other film companies. He works with Raven Banner. He works with other distribution companies, and so he just started working with me a couple months ago. I've known Johnny for probably almost 10 years. He first started helping me at the beginning of Indiecan, and then he moved back to the UK. And so since then, I've been trying to get to work with Johnny, and it just never was able to happen until recently. And now he's handling the Indiecan social media, and it's obviously benefited from him being involved. And I'm very grateful to have him working with me. He's great.
So he's somewhat of a hired gun?
Yeah, I mean, that's what he does for a living, is he does social media for film companies. He's been doing it forever. I feel like he's been doing it for over 10 years. And he's really good at it, and he knows a lot of people in the industry, and especially in the genre side of the business. You want people like that when you're promoting films on the distribution side. You need somebody who really knows how to reach out to the audience properly, and he does that.
So is it the type of thing you give him a bunch of information that you've been up to for the past week or the past month, or how often do you update him, and how does he get the information from you that he needs to post to everyone else
Well,
or
he
let everyone
knows
else know?
there's certain elements that he requires to properly make GIFs and all this other stuff. So I give him my release schedule for Indiecan, the movies that are coming out and when and what platforms. And he watches the films. Like he needs to know what the film is all about so that he knows how to target an audience to it. So I give him the films, the trailers, clips, stills, posters, and he watches the film and he comes up with a strategy, and his strategy is very effective for the most part. And you hire a PR company to help get the film in front of bloggers or reviewers or whatever. And so if you have that kind of outreach mixed in with the social media outreach, then you're doing your job properly. And it's hard for an indie distributor who's handling titles that are not big budget titles that don't have name cast in it. So you're relying on the hook of the film, the buzz that the film is generated in festivals and things like that to get the word out. It's harder to get people's attention on a small budget indie film than it is in a studio picture, obviously, right? So you have to work extra hard, and you have to really dig into the minutia of what the film is about and how can you pitch it to an audience. There's a Christmas movie that I've released in November. It's called Cup of Cheer. It was made in Ontario by a guy named Jake Horowitz. It's sort of a mock on Hallmark type Christmas movies. It's a comedy. It's actually quite hilarious. And so that film is out in North America through Indiecan on various digital platforms like Amazon Prime and Tubi and Vudu and a bunch of other sites. It just got released in the UK a week or so ago, and it's on Sky in the UK. It's doing quite well. And this is the second feature that Jake made. His previous film called All About Who You Know did really well. Crave, playing on Crave right now actually, and played the festival circuit quite extensively. So he focuses mostly on comedy, and he's really good at comedy, and he's developing a whole bunch of other projects, some of which hopefully I'm going to help him make, because I think he's really talented and really good, very good writer, strong writer. So that's the Christmas film that we just released. It actually we played it at drive-ins early November, and it was actually the #1 Canadian box office movie for the week that we released it. And again, we just released it in drive-ins because of obviously COVID. And it was in the #1 Canadian film that week, and I think it was in the top five or six films in Canada overall that week.
And what thing is judging this? Apple ratings or something?
No, it's
like
box
that?
office.
Box office. And so how do you come across this? Like you mentioned, you want to work with Jake again. How do you come across people to collaborate with?
Well, people know me. I mean, I'm a very approachable producer, and a very approachable distributor. So people know that I'm not shy about meeting anybody. I'm not shy about looking at a synopsis for a script. I'm not shy about anything. So for me, I'm always looking for stuff to get involved in, and if I like it, I will get involved. Even when I exec produce a project, I'm very hands-on. It's not just putting my name on a project. I dig into the minutia of the creative with the filmmakers and help them make the best film that they can. Because if I'm going to put my name on it, I've spent 25 years building a solid reputation, and I don't want to tarnish it by putting my name on something that I don't believe in. So I'm very involved in any project that I put my name on. And when I see a good film or made by a good filmmaker, then and they fit into the same kind of categories that I like to live in, then it makes a lot of sense to collaborate. And I think our industry is a collaborative kind of industry. So the more that you can collaborate with like-minded people, the better. And Jake is one of those people. Reese Evanescen and Gabriel Carrere, who I made For the Sake of Vicious with, are the same, those kinds of people that I appreciate collaborating with. And we had a lot of fun making For the Sake of Vicious, and it turned out really, really well. And now we've got a bunch of other projects in development that hopefully we're going to make one or two of them this next year. Laura Tremblay, who I met on a show that I exec produced called The Cocksure Lads, has become my best friend and my producing partner. And when I got into directing, I directed a short film last year. She produced it with me. And I just directed my first feature called A Family Seduction for Mar Vista. She was involved in that film with me. I've been collaborating with Jen Pogue and Emily Andrews. And
You directed your first feature now?
Yeah.
Oh, excellent. Okay, I want to get into that too. So just 3 quick questions for you.
Yeah.
Have you met people to collaborate with through film festivals, script challenges, and schools, workshops, anything like that?
No, but I mean, like, people, I get emails every day from people saying, I have a script I'd like for you, that I think fits into your thing. And I say, send me a synopsis, and I read it. And if I like it, then I get them to send me the script. I probably read 100 scripts a year. And I probably have in development now over 25 projects in various stages of development with different people.
Would you say that's the rarity, though, that you're so accessible and open to reading so much stuff?
I would say that I am. Look, I mean, I don't know what the average producer has in their development slate, but I guarantee you they don't have the volume that I do. And, people say, well, how can you possibly manage that many projects? Well, it's, I do. And they're pretty much lower budget level projects. You kind of know when they're ready, then you go after the money. Like, it's that simple. It's not like when you've got bigger budget projects, it's much more involved. Sometimes they require international co-productions or interprovincial co-productions, and a lot more reaching out for money. Most of the budgets that I'm making now are under $250,000. There's not, and many of them you can't go to traditional funders for because they're genre, and the traditional funders typically don't do genre. So you're basically limited to going to private investment. So, I've got a very good handle on where the projects are. They don't move forward until the script is there. And when the script is there, then they move forward to trying to get them financed. And then once they're financed, away we go, we make them. And, again, out of the 100 projects I might read a year, maybe 2 or 3 are great. The rest of them don't fit the bill of, can I finance it? Can I sell it? Can it be made for a smaller budget? Why should I make it? Why should I not make it? I mean, there's all kinds of questions that I ask while I'm reading, right? And I make notes on every script that I read. And I just don't read like 10 pages and then I stop. I read the whole thing, whether it's good or bad, because the script may be really bad, but within that 90, 100 pages, there might be one idea that I can scrap the whole script and start and just focus on one idea within that script and make a movie out of that. And I've done that before. With the digital age and everything else, everybody thinks that they're a filmmaker, and you can go to VizTech and buy yourself a digital camera, 4K digital camera, and go make yourself a movie. But is it any good is the first question. Is it worth making, and will anybody want to see it? you got to pretty much answer those questions to decide whether you move forward with it. And I think that for the most part, a lot of people are making films without asking those questions, and then nobody sees it because it shouldn't have been made. Listen, there's lots of films that I've made where I didn't get paid to make them. Many of the lower budget films that we make, the producer reinvests their fees to make the movie. The director reinvests their fees to make the movie. The writer reinvests their fees to make the movie. Because at the end of the day, we believe that in the movie, and we believe that we'll see money at the back end. So you're willing to do that for the sake of the greater good, right? Not many people have that appetite, the willingness to do that. You know? But I feel like if everything's on the table. Like, you have to find a way to make it. And if this is what you need to do to make it, then that's what you need to do to make it.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of why you have to love making the project, because every project I've made, no matter how low budget, 2,000, 5,000, I pretty much went for broke every time. However much money I had at the time, I went for broke, put it all into it, kind of thing. And that pretty much happens for every film.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, I don't remember. I think I've gotten paid once in the last, I don't know, since 2000 and maybe 12. I've only been able to pay myself once on a movie I produced out of the fees in the budget. Every other time I've had to reinvest my fees, and I've never regretted it once. And for the most part, every time that I've reinvested my fees, I've gotten my fees back. So.
And is that also kind of why you got into the distribution game? Because when you control the content, that's where you can make some money from it?
Distribution, if anybody thinks that there's real money in distribution in this country, they're mistaken. I would say I thought being a producer was thankless. Being a distributor is even more thankless. Especially theatrical now. Theatrical now, as we know it, is completely blown up. Like, we will never see theatrical like we once did. And Canadian independent cinema, seeing the inside of a movie theater is going to be really, really hard moving forward. We're losing some independent cinemas because they can't afford to stay open because of COVID. They're shutting down. We're going to lose a bunch more before this is all over. And I think that the ability for a Canadian independent film to get inside a movie theater for a week run is going to be really challenging now. So I think being a distributor in Canada, I did it originally because a film that I made, which was called Moonpoint, that I made with Sean Cisterna, we couldn't get a distributor. And out of frustration, I said, I'm going to become a distributor. And people said, don't do it, man. Like, you're going to regret it. And, here I am almost 10 years later and over 150 films released, still doing it. Mostly with films made for under $1 million independently, and many of them made for way less than $1 million, and helping them realize proper distribution. We're making 300 to 400 films a year in Canada. Mongrel and Elevation and Level and all these companies are not going to take all these films. Like, they're just not. It's not a business model that you can sustain. So that means that there's a lot of good films that deserve to see the light of day, that need somebody who believes in them enough to help them get it out there, and that's where I come in.
So what platform are they going to be on? Because Netflix is pretty much mostly original programming now. Not every film is going to make it to Crave TV. Where are these films going to be shown?
Well, they go to digital for sure. So they'll see, like, iTunes, they'll see, cable VOD like Bell VOD or Shaw VOD or Rogers VOD or Telus VOD. Where possible, we'll sell to broadcast, but again, the broadcasters aren't buying the same amount of content, Canadian low budget content, as they used to. So it's a tough game. It's a really tough game. Distribution is not an easy game now, and it costs money to put these films up on these platforms, and then to publicize them and social media them and stuff. And so many times, the distributor loses money as opposed to making money on the release of a title. And now with COVID, like nobody knows what's going to happen with a title, and titles that you think will do really well don't, and titles that you don't think will do really well do. And there's so much content being put up every month because of people are at home. You're competing with a lot of content, and you're fighting for that, people to find your title on the list of new titles that are coming out that month, and what people are going to bump on and want to going to spend their $4.99 or $9.99 or whatever. It's hard, it puts more pressure that the posters have to be really, really good. The trailers have to be really, really good. The title needs to be really, really good. The synopsis needs to be really good. And even if you have all those things, it doesn't guarantee you anything.
I want to get your opinion on one thing that I've noticed is somewhat of a trend that I notice on IMDb. Why is it that Canadian projects don't post their budget?
Well,
or their success or their gross, also their gross, where you see all American films, whether they're failures or successes, all have their budgets shown.
Well, you don't want to go out and publicize that you've made your film for $50,000 or $75,000, because mentally people look at that and go, oh, it mustn't be very good because it was made for so little, right? It's an optical thing. So you don't want to really put that out there. Now, if you were made for $1 million or you're made for $2 million or whatever, fine. But if you're made for a small budget, again, automatically people think, well, it can't be very good because you made it for no money, right? So I think that's why people don't put the budget. And look, at the end of the day, I don't think budget matters. Like I can make a $200,000 movie look like a $5 million movie, and I've done it, and so has many other people. But the thing is that I think we should spend less time worrying about what the budget of a film is, and more about the story and the execution of the film, right? I think we spend too much time worrying about the things that don't really matter and don't pay enough attention to the things that really do matter. Audience doesn't care what the budget of the film is. Audience cares about how good is the concept and how good is the execution of the film at the end of the day. That's what they walk out of the theater talking about. They don't go about, gee, I wonder what the budget of that movie was, right? They don't. There's, and I'm sure you've been to festivals, Ian, where somebody will ask a question traditionally in an audience, how much was the movie made for, right? And somebody always happens to ask that. Most of the time, those questions are being asked by industry people because they kind of get it. But Joe Public doesn't really concern themselves with that.
When did the music thing come about? When did you want to get into music as well, and why?
So I've been involved in the music industry since I was a kid. Grew up in Edmonton, and I was in a band and used to play in my basement with my buddies and stuff. And then getting into the film industry, I became friends with a lot of Canadian artists, M. Griner, Danny Michel, and a host of other great artists. And what I found, the music industry is very similar to the film industry in that, great musicians can write great songs, and they can perform great on stage and go to venues and play really great sets and fill the place with people. They don't really know A, how to make a record, some of them, or B, how to get it out there. And I felt that there was really great talent out there that were continually making music but weren't getting it out there. And so the purpose of Indiecan Records was to find those great singer-songwriters who, either they're writing songs or they're covering songs and they're doing stuff on YouTube, or they're playing at the odd venue on a Friday night or Thursday night or whatever, but they're not developing their own records and getting them out there. And the first person that I ever signed was Laura Tremblay, who was in this movie Cocksure Lads that I exec produced. And I noticed that she had this YouTube channel where she was playing cover songs from her apartment. And I reached out to her and I said, love to have a meeting with you to talk to you about something. And we met for coffee, and I said, you know, you've got a great voice. You're very talented. Why are you not writing your own original music and recording it and getting a record out there? And she had said, well, you know, I never really thought about it, and I hadn't really written any music. And I said, do you have a writing partner that you could write some songs for? And she says, yeah, as a matter of fact, I have a friend, Kashka, and we're really good friends, and we play together. And yeah, we could try giving it a shot. And so within 2 months, they had written, I think, 18 songs. And the director and producer of the movie she was in, a guy named Murray Foster, who was a member of Great Big Sea, we approached him about the idea of him producing her first record, and he said, absolutely. And so Laura raised some money, I think it was a GoFundMe maybe, to help her raise the money to record the record. And then we put it out on through Indiecan, and then from that, she took Via Rail has this awesome thing where an artist will go on a train from Toronto and go on the train across the country, and they get the free ride on the train, but they have to play X number of times a day on the train, acoustic performances. And so she did that, and then on the way back, she had planned a bit of a tour coming back towards Ontario, and she played a bunch of locations here in Toronto and other parts of Ontario. And you know, we released the record, and you know, she's now writing songs for her next record, which we hope to record and release in 2021. But it's more like, I never opened Indiecan Records with this vision that I was going to make a whole bunch of money, because the music industry is far more challenged monetary-wise than the film industry. It's very hard for an artist to make money. They make most of their money touring and playing live and stuff. And we all know physical CDs are basically a thing of the past, and it's all on digital, like Spotify or iTunes or whatever. It's very hard for an artist to monetize a movie, their music in sales. It's more about getting the audience so when they go on tour that they can make money that way. And so it was more about supporting the artist than it was about making money. And Indiecan hasn't made money really. It's more about helping the artist. And Indiecan is also a vehicle for me. When we create original music for film, it's a vehicle that potentially we could release the soundtracks of the movie as well. So that helps the composer. It helps, you know, you're using the music to market the film, you're using the film to market the music. So it's sort of a win-win, right?
And are you getting not CDs like we said, but digital copies of people's music the same way you get scripts, or people reaching out to you like that?
No, I mean, not a lot of people have reached out to me at all, actually. The two artists, Laura and Jennifer Hollab, who's in Sudbury, I basically approached myself. And I haven't spent a lot of time trying to expand the roster. Again, it's not really a money-making venture. It's not a money-making venture. I'd like to have a couple more artists on it who, you know, just want to get their music out, you know, that's what they want. It's not, and they have to understand that it's not like, unless they break and they make it on major radio and the charts and stuff like that, like, it's just it's a slog. It really is. But many of them do it because they're passionate about writing music and playing music.
I want to talk about Red Balloon a little bit. This was your directorial debut. It was a short film.
Yeah.
Why did you wait so long to direct your first film? Had you wanted to be a director at any point prior and it got offshot somewhere, and then you finally got back to it?
It's funny. I was traveling around the festival circuit with Justin McConnell. We were traveling around with a movie called Life Changer that we had made, and we were in Busan, South Korea at a festival, and we were in the middle of a typhoon. And we were sitting in our hotel room because we couldn't go out because it was too dangerous. And so we got to this conversation about, you know, if this was it, this was our swan song, we were never going to survive this typhoon. What was our one career regret? And mine was that I had never directed anything. And I never, to be honest, you know, I'd never even contemplated it before that moment, ever. I was very happy producing other people's movies, like I really was. Never crossed my mind for 1 second. But at that moment, when asked the question, that was the only thing that I could think of. And just basically that I'd been doing this for 25 years and I never directed anything. And so I made the decision on the way when I came back after that trip that I was going to announce on Facebook that I wanted to direct my first short film and that I was looking for a script. So I did that, and within 36 hours, I had over 100 submissions. And I was going to another festival with Justin in Mexico, and so I took all the scripts with me, and I read them all on my trip to Mexico. And there was only one that spoke to me, and I read it, I cried. And it was this script called Red Balloon, written by Lauren Greenwood. And I literally cried. I went, oh my God, this is exact. And it fit the model of some of my most successful films, like 1 Week, Still Mine, and Kiss and Cry. That sort of, it could have been based on a true story. It was a true story kind of story that was an issue based where somebody had an illness. And I just bumped on it immediately. I reached out to Lauren the moment I got back from Toronto, and she was excited and agreed to let me make the movie. And I said, look, I really like the script, but I still think it could use a little bit of something. So we spent basically 6 months working the script. 9 pages. We spent 6 months making it better. And we did. And then in April of last year, I said, okay, now I'm going to go raise some money. So I launched an Indiegogo campaign, and we raised almost enough money to pay for the film. And then I put some of my own personal money in it, and we shot it in August last year, and finished it at the beginning of December of 2019, and put it out to a bunch of festivals. And unfortunately, because of COVID, I didn't get into most of the ones that I submitted to, because the number of films that they selected were significantly less, because they were all virtual festivals, right? So it hasn't had the biggest success in festivals. I also would say that it's a very, very sad 9 minutes or 10 minutes. It's not the most it's a beautiful film. Everybody that sees it cries, but it's not traditionally the kind of film that you would necessarily see at most significant festivals. Although the feedback I've gotten is very, very, very good, and the places that I have played it love it. And how I got to direct.
Will you be able to see it anywhere?
Not yet. I'll be releasing it through Indiecan probably next spring. There's a few festivals that I'm waiting for to see if it gets in, and then I'll put it up in the digital landscape as much as possible.
And so then making this film sort of churned your next directing endeavor, is that it?
So what happened was, I had produced the movie for Mar Vista / Neshama in November last year. It went really, really well. It's a movie, it's like a Lifetime type movie that I produced for them. And it went really, really well. And they asked me to produce some more films for them this year. And then COVID hit, and so we couldn't really do anything together. I had sort of mentioned to them that I had just directed this short film, and I wanted to share it with them because I was proud of it. I shared it with them. They really liked it, and I said, nudgingly, hey, how about me directing one of your films for you? And thinking nothing of it really, And so they approached me in the summer saying, when things get back to the ability to be able to shoot again, we'd like you to produce a film for us. We have this one in mind, and we'd like you to direct it. And I sort of, my mouth hit the floor. It was like, really? Like, somebody wants me to direct a film for them? Like, oh my God. And so we shot the film November 2nd to 20th in Hamilton. Went really, really well. The best crew I've ever worked with, no question about it. And 15 days, and I delivered the director's cut last week. They really like it, and we'll see if I get to do more. But look, a director is only as good, and I've I thought this, but I never really thought about it until I made the film. But I think I truly believe the director is only as good as the people around him or her. And I was lucky to have the people that I had around me. If I didn't have those people, I might have been in trouble. They had my back. It was a very collaborative set. I wanted anybody who felt like they had something to say, that they could say it, that they could suggest an idea. Nobody was left not being able to put their hand up and put something forward. And I think because of that, I think the film is as good as it is because of it. And you know, I've always been a collaborative person. I felt like I needed to be even more collaborative being the director on this movie. Even though I was also the producer of the movie, I felt like I really needed to embrace this idea of this really 100% collaboration scenario, and also trust them that they would do an amazing job, and they did. And I, you know, they pitched me what they wanted to do, whether it be in wardrobe or art department or cinematography or whatever, and it all sounded great. I believed in what they were telling me, and I had the studio sign off on it. They agreed with everything we were pitching, with some changes which we modified for them. But I think we delivered what we said we were going to do, and I'm proud of that, and I'm proud of everybody who was involved in making it, because again, without them, we wouldn't have had the quality of film that we do have. So and I think these smaller budget movies require that. Like, you have to be really collaborative on these smaller budget movies, because if you don't, you're not going to achieve what you need to achieve and want to achieve at those budget levels without the real collaborative process. You know what I mean? So.
One thing I've kind of realized is that it comes down to being a great director is kind of sensibilities and your choices, because you can be collaborative, let all these people, but you need to know the project well enough that there is kind of a right decision and a wrong decision. You kind of know why you're making one decision over the other, at least. Really, it comes down to making, almost like an actor, making right choices. Because you're presented so many decisions and choices, and you have to make one all the time. And I think you just, you got to succeed more than you don't succeed with those choices.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think the more successful indie films are the ones that are the most collaborative. That's what I think. And look, we're outputting really good content now. I feel like if the content creators spent more time developing their scripts first, and don't put a timeline on it, like it's ready when it's ready, then if they do that, I think that more and more better films will be made. I just think there's way too many people that are in a rush, that they feel like, okay, I have to have the most amazing script in 6 months, and then at the 6-month mark, I'm going to go make the movie. No. You make it when it's meant to be made and when it's ready to be made. And you can't put a timeline on development. You can't. Like, it's ready when it's ready. And I mean, I've been on shows that weren't my own where you're constantly, script changes are coming out every day. Like, your script should be basically 98% there before you even start official prep of your movie. Period. And I really don't think that there's enough filmmakers that are actually dedicating themselves to do that.
I agree. I think it comes down to work ethic and putting in the time. And I think there's a lot of people with a lot of scripts floating out there. And if you're reading these scripts, you can probably see who has put the time more so than who hasn't. But, there's everybody who kind of wants to, like, I'm a location manager, but I'm still writing scripts on the side. But kind of like you said, I really take the time. You said you worked on a 10-page script or a 9-page script for 6 months. I did a similar thing. I had a very short 13-page script that I worked on for about a year, kind of thing. So you really have to put in the time, and it's hard to see who's putting in the work ethic and who's not, and who's who you can trust for these things. Most times you can maybe see it in the script by reading the material and knowing who just wants to, who's trying to just make something and, oh, I got to write this script.
Yeah, but I mean, look at, I mean, there's lots of people, well, this script has won this award and 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 all these script writing festivals and stuff, these film festivals. And I go, okay, let me see it. And I read it and I go, you gotta be kidding me. Why are they not, why am I seeing something different than what they're seeing? Like, I don't get it. And so for me, it's like I'm also reading it, Ian, with the idea, like, can I finance this? Who's going to see it? When on the back of the script, or if the back of the script still has writing, I'll add a blank piece of paper at the end of the script. And I break it down. I write down the number of speaking parts, the number of locations, the number of picture vehicles, the number of BG days, blah, blah, blah. And then I write pros and cons as to should I make it and why shouldn't I make it and why, and anything else that's relatable. And after I've read the script and I've made all my notes, I basically walk away from it for the rest of the day, and I'll come back to it the next day or a few days later, and I'll look at the notes that I've written. And from that, I'll decide whether or not I should make it or I shouldn't. And then I'll write also, as I'm writing, if something comes to me like, oh, this is very Donnie Darko, or this is very Little Miss Sunshine, or whatever, I'll make that note. Because if I find an inherent comparables that I can compare to that have been successful films that I can use as my comparatives for this film, then that's a plus for me as well, right? So and I'm comparing, the comparatives have to be small budget films. Like, I'm not going to compare, oh, this is Gandhi. No, like, I'm never going to raise the Gandhi money, right? So the films that I know that were lower budget that compare well to this, like, I'll use an example. One of my favorite films that I've ever watched that I wish I would have made as a filmmaker is a movie called Some Kind of Wonderful. It's made by John Hughes. It stars Mary Stuart Masterton, Eric Stoltz, Leah Thompson, and it's a very simplistic movie. It's basically the story of a guy who's in high school, grade 12, who comes from not a great neighborhood. His, family doesn't have really any money. He works as in an auto garage, working as an assistant mechanic when he's not in school. He's an artist. He paints. He's really talented that way. His best friend is a tomboy, played by Mary Stuart Masterton, and they're best friends. She's a drummer. They hang out all the time, but the girl that he has his eyes for is this girl that grew up in his neighborhood, but she hangs out with the football team and the cheerleaders because she wants to be in that in crowd, right? But he has his eyes for her. So he sets out on this mission to have her fall in love with him and to go out with him on a date and hopefully be his girlfriend. And he saves up and buys her a set of diamond earrings because he feels like she deserves them. And he takes her out on this dream date and gives her the earrings. And his friend, the tomboy, he rents this fancy car that his tomboy friend chauffeur is the chauffeur and drives them on their date. And at the end of the movie, he realizes that the person he was always meant to be with from day one was his tomboy friend. And he ends up giving her the earrings at the end of the movie. And I can relate to that movie. I was that guy. And many of us were that guy. And it's a super simple movie that you could have made for nothing. Just like a previous movie, Breakfast Club, 6-7 people in a school for the entire movie, a bunch of no-name actors that nobody's ever heard of who have now become huge. Kitchen table names at the dinner table, that movie, again, could have been made for nothing, but it's super powerful. Everybody related to those kids in that school on detention, right? We don't make those films here. When was the last time you saw a Breakfast Club or some kind of wonderful or 16 Candles kind of movie in Canada? You can count them on less than one hand. Those films are cult classics. People know those films. You mentioned those films titles, people know them, they've seen them, they love them. We need in this country to make those kinds of films. We need to make those cult classic kind of films. Now, I think we've made some really super amazing films. Sleeping Giant, Closet Monster, I can go on. There's tons of great titles made under the low budget scenario that are, I put up against any international film out there. But we're not making enough of them. And we need to.
Do you think Canada is missing somewhat of an identity of the type of films we make?
I think we have our own identity, and I think like the one thing that you hear a lot of when we're doing other people's shows, like service shows, that looks so Canadian. You know, it's how we light it or whatever, which I think is just okay, whatever. But I also think that, you know, we make great work here. Like Orphan Black was made here, and Flashpoint was made here, and we're making Star Trek Discovery here. We're making lots of really great shows here that nobody knows that they were made in Canada. And because I think our talent pool of creatives and technicians and everything, I'd put up against anybody anywhere in the world. We are excelling at the craft of making content. But on our own domestic front of our own domestic feature film, I think that we still, I think we can do more, and I think we need to. I think we need to welcome and audiences need to be introduced more to our content in the feature film side of things. I don't think our feature films get enough exposure and credit from the media, from the funders, from anybody. I think it's a constant slog for us to try to get our content in front of audiences, and I think that there needs to be a mandate to force the broadcasters to support our content, the theaters to support our content, everybody to support our content. Why is it so hard for us to get our films in theaters? Why are we not putting pressure on Cineplex and Landmark to make it a mandate that X percentage of the theaters have Canadian content in it? That just feels like that should be an automatic, right?
One thing you mentioned, films that are easily achievable to be produced. I've seen you've done a lot of road movies. I actually just watched 1 Week for the first time not long ago, and I really liked it. I thought it was a great film. Is there anything interesting you could tell us about that?
So that film was one of my favorite experiences of making a film. I mean, driving across Canada in a bus with 18 other crew members, going from Toronto to Tofino over the course of 3 weeks. And then we came back and shot for, I think, 2 or 3 weeks in Ontario, Toronto area and stuff. An amazing script by Mike McGowan, who constantly writes great scripts and directs great movies. I've been lucky enough to be involved in 3 of his films, 1 Week, Score Hockey Musical, and Still Mine. All 3 great scripts, all 3 well directed. Some of the greatest crews I've ever worked with, and heartfelt stories, like, which is my favorite kind of storytelling to do, which is, you know, telling those kinds of stories that were told, like 1 Week was, and the, you know, the success of that movie starts with the script, but also Josh's performance, how it was shot. The people involved in making that film with us were some of the nicest people I've ever gotten a chance to know on making a movie. And you become really close spending that much time together, driving on a bus and in a pickup truck and a minivan across the country for the span of the time that we did. And that was in 2007. Was an experience I'll never forget. As a matter of fact, when we celebrated our 10-year anniversary, we had a bit of a reunion of sorts with some of the crew back in 2017. You know, I think we'll have probably in 2022, we'll probably have a 15-year anniversary, just because that film was a life changer for many of us. It really was. And the stories that we tell from that adventure, are some of the funniest stories, or some of the emotional stories. And plus, we got to see Canada, right? Like, and I've done that drive. I've driven across the country a bunch of times, and like, we don't really realize how beautiful our country is until you've done that drive. And you've seen the places that we've seen, standing in the middle of Drumheller National Park. Like, it's you're Godsmacked. Like, you just are. And like, if you don't really realize how lucky you are to be living in Canada, then you need to get your head examined. Like, we are so lucky to be Canadian. Like, we really are, in so many different ways. And it really sets the tone when you're standing there. We were in Medicine Hat, Alberta, which the scene where they're with the horses and they're overlooking that big canyon, that was Medicine Hat. The dinosaur park in Drumheller, Thunder Bay, Ontario. I mean, we Tofino, which is, I'd never been. It was like one of the most beautiful places in the country I've ever been. I mean, it was inspirational, you know. And how many times do you get to make a movie like that in your life? Once, if you're lucky. And I feel like there was a lot of firsts for me in my career in 25 years, be it as a producer, but also as a line producer. I shot a TV series for Danny Iron, who's a producer I have a lot of respect for in Canada, in the Yukon, in Whitehorse. And that was a life-changing experience for me. And the people that I met there are forever my friends and family. And one of the better experiences of my life. So I think, the country that we live in, how amazing it is, and the people that exist here and in our industry, we're very fortunate. We have an opportunity to do really, really good stuff, and I think we really need to try to do as much good stuff as we can.
So speaking of road movies that changed your life, there's one that changed my life, and that's actually where we met, and that was on I'm Yours in about 2010, I think. So for me, about 10 years later, looking back, I can only imagine the chaos that you must have been dealing with trying to produce this movie. Because I know, I think I was a first time, I'd only been a location PA once or twice before, and here I was thrown in to be a location manager. Now, really, it was the best thing for my career ever. For one, you had been a location manager previously before the producing, so I had your skill set helping me. But also, when you throw someone into the fire like that, you just have to learn. There's no way out of it. So I learned a ton. And it actually opened up a huge gateway for me that I became a location manager much earlier than a lot of other people would. Like, I've been location managing since I was almost 23, say,
Right.
Some people don't, I know people who are still my age who have been ALMing, or people who are older than me who have been ALMing for 25 years waiting to move up or try it out. So I was very lucky in that regard.
Yeah.
But I remember one thing that you said at the end of it, and I don't know if this was a little bit of a speech or if it's true, but you said growing up, you always wanted to be a firefighter. And
yeah, I mean,
is that true? Because
well, no,
at the end you said, well, instead I became a producer and I'm putting out different kind of fires.
Yeah, I mean, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a fire engine. And then I went on this program. It was called Popcorn Playhouse. And the guy says, "Hey, kid." And I was there for my birthday party. I was like, I don't know, 7 or something. "Hey, kid, what do you want to be when you grow up?" "I want to be a fire engine." Look, I had a big admiration for firemen, and what we do as producers or even production managers on films and TV shows is we're constantly putting out fires. I mean, that's what we're doing, in a much different way, obviously. And I hold a lot of, it's funny, whenever I'm at some place where I see a fireman coming out of a fire truck, going into location, not knowing what they're going to get themselves into. I kind of feel like sometimes that's us. I'm working on a show, and I can relate to that. Obviously, they're doing something a lot more dangerous than what we are doing, obviously, and I have a huge amount of respect for the firemen and women that keep us safe. but we are in an industry like, because we're making these shows in such a short time. We and we don't necessarily think of everything that there is to think of. I feel like we are constantly putting out fires, and I think many of the fires that we're putting out we could have avoided had we prepped more. Because I don't think, and I really believe this, I don't think we prep enough our films. I think we don't spend enough time in prep, getting our productions ready to go properly. And so I kind of feel like if we did spend more time prepping it, that I think they would go off a little bit easier. I mean, you're still, because of the short order of how fast things happen in our industry, you're still going to have fires to put out. But I think you can, by having more prep, I think you can alleviate some of the prep.
So for that show, for me, I'm Yours, that we shot there, I'm very gracious to yourself, because even though we only get to reconnect every couple of years, you actually were one of my co-signees into the DGC, which essentially unlocked this huge gateway to me, changed my life, and essentially put me where I am now, which I said when we first started talking, I'm not some huge success to a bunch of other people, but to myself, I'm very happy in doing the things that I love. Right. So I'm very gracious to yourself for that. It was yourself and Chief Fung. Did anyone sign you into the DGC when you first started, or how did you get in?
God. I don't even remember who signed me in. I mean, we're talking 25 years ago. Byron Martin, who's my lifelong friend, I've been friends with him. We grew up together in Edmonton, and he was the location manager in the guild. And he was the first person I worked for after I got out of the computer industry. So he signed my letter. And I don't remember who the second person was. But God, I don't know. I'd be interested to find out who that was. But I know Byron was one of them. And I mean, I had a plan in my head that when I got in the business, like I had been in the computer industry, I got my computer degree. I'd been in the computer industry for a bunch of years, and then I was unhappy, and I decided to get into film. And so I started as a location PA, and I did that for basically, I don't know, 8 months maybe, and then I started ALM. I did an ALM one show. Was it one show? One or two shows, one with Byron, and I think maybe one was somebody else. And then I started location managing. And I basically location managed from 1997 maybe till 96 or 97 till 2000 maybe. My last show as a location manager was a movie called Daydream Believers, the story of the monkeys, for Showtime, I think. And so I did that, and then, no, it wasn't for Showtime, I don't remember who it was for, but that was the last movie I location managed. And then I started assistant production managing a series called Twice in a Lifetime. And then I did some Dufferin Gate shows as a producer. I mean, as a production manager. And then my first feature as a producer was 1 week. And since 1 week, I've produced over 60 movies. So in the span of 13 years, I've produced 60 movies.
How do you make that hump from APMing and stuff to your first official producing gig? Did you have to kind of convince people? Had they worked with you before? You had they saw your proven track record. They know you're good with money because you're doing the APM thing.
Well, the APM thing happened. I was APMing Twice in a Lifetime, and they got greenlit to do a show called Doc. So they pulled the production manager, Joanne Jackson, from Twice in a Lifetime and put her on Doc. And the lead producer of that show was Marilyn Stonehouse, who was a staple in our industry and a mentor to many people, including myself. And so she said, "Don't worry, hun, I'll take care of you." And basically, she continued on my training for the rest of that show, the season 1 of Twice in a Lifetime. And then that was it. I sort of took off as a production manager. I did a bunch of things for Dufferin Gate, Patrick Whitley and Steve Wakefield. And then I just, I probably around 2004 or 5, I started looking for projects to produce. And I had worked with my friends Anna Stratton and Robin Cass at Triptych Media, and they were doing stuff, and they brought me on to production manage a show for them in 2005, and sort of got me thinking about finding my own stuff. And then they were involved in a documentary project called As Slow as Possible that Robin Cass invited me to produce with him with Scott Smith, and we did that, and that was sort of the beginning of the end. And I just started optioning material and developing it, and then I got asked to be involved. 1 week was already greenlit by Telefilm, and I got asked by Mike McGowan to come on and production manage the show, and I ended up becoming a co-producer of the movie when we made it. And then he asked me to score a hockey musical with him, and then Still Mine with him. And while that was happening, I was sort of developing some of my own stuff. And then I produced a movie called High Life with Triptych Media. And then I just, started going off and doing some of my own stuff. And, I started Indiecan 10K and Indiecan 20K, which was these initiatives to help first-time feature filmmakers make their first features. So I triggered 6 films for the Indiecan 10K. And then I triggered a couple years later 2 for the Indiecan 20K project. And so I raised a bunch of sponsorship to help these filmmakers make their films. And so I sort of mentored all those projects through distribution. And again, still developing and making projects on a regular basis with really great people.
Yeah, you worked with Ross of Sutherland on High Life, and we worked with him on I'm Yours. Did you see him in River?
Yeah, he was fantastic.
He was great in River. I love that movie. I love his performance. I really wish I saw a bit more of him in stuff where he gets to flex more of his chops for things that he actually wants to do.
Yeah, no, he's super great and super talented, and one of the nicest guys. If you remember on I'm Yours, he was like one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. Like, he was just part of the game, right? And even
Corinne.
Yeah, Corinne Vaness, she was also super lovely, right? Everybody on that show was great. And Jen and Len, who are my dear friends who produced the movie, and Len directed it, are, I've been friends with them since 2006 when they hired me to production manage their movie All Hat for them that Len directed. And to this day, I'm still close friends with them, and I love them like they're like family. And that movie was like, the crew was great. Johnny Cliff was the DP, and it was a very small unit of people. Scotty was our sound guy, and we just had a really tight-knit group. I think it was 20 people on that show, crew-wise. Steve Henry was the designer, and we just did it. It was
the perfect show for me to be on and kind of fail my way through. No one gave me a hard time that they would have given me on pretty much every other set that I would have been on if I was doing the thing. Like, I actually thought I did quite well for my first time ever, but there was definitely things that I just didn't know needed to be done.
Well, look, you had none of the tools. Like, I was giving you templates of resident letters and all these kinds of things that, I mean, you had no knowledge of the process. You'd never done it before. Because you were a PA, you didn't even get the chance at ALM. You were basically thrown into the fire, because in those days there was really nobody up there that had experience, and the people that did have experience were already involved on something else. So it wasn't like I could go to somebody with more experience and hire them to do the job and make you a PA or an ALM. There was just no opportunity for that, and the budget was so small that your department was you, right? And so it was trial by fire, and we tried to reduce the amount of fire that you were being dealt with by giving you the tools of the trade and trying to walk you through how to do a location permit and how to do a resident letter and how to, like, which now you look at as second nature today, right? Because you've been doing it as long as you've been doing it. But back then, it was like, I'm sure your eyeballs rolled into the back of your skull going, what the frick is this? I don't know what I'm doing. And I just hope I can help get this show through it all alive, right?
It seems like you shoot a lot in Hamilton. Just before we jump into the last thing that I call here, the gauntlet. Just before we jump into the gauntlet, tell me about why you like shooting in Hamilton.
Well, I mean, first of all, you get an extra 10% regional bonus tax credit wise by shooting out there. But also, like, Hamilton used to be, is what Toronto used to be, where you have a lot of locations there that look like other places, like Chicago, like New York, like, I mean, it does. It has a lot of different looks that Toronto used to have. But because now with all the condo building and modernization in Toronto, like Goodham and Warts, you don't have Goodham and Warts anymore. You have what is known as the Cotton Factory in Hamilton that basically looks like Goodham and Warts used to look like. We don't have those looks in Toronto anymore. We've lost most of them. And so Toronto, as a lot of like Chicago or New York or Detroit or whatever, that's gone. It's not, there is stuff, but it's not as plentiful as what it used to be when I was first location managing. And I'm sure you know now, when you're scouting and you're looking for those unique kind of looking locations, because they all say, we need this show to look like New York. We need it to look like Chicago. We need it to look like Detroit. Or we need it to look like Boston, whatever. We're losing more every day. We're losing more and more of that here. And so you got to go to other places to find it. The problem is, because the shows can't afford to put all your crew in overnight and pay per diem and all that stuff, it's got to be close to Toronto. So what's the closest option that looks like some of these places? Hamilton.
Well, this has been very informative, very insightful. Thank you for being here today. And now I'd like to take this time and for us to step into the gauntlet. Avi, what shape is the sky?
I wouldn't say that it is a shape. I mean, it could be round. It could be, I mean, we know that the Earth isn't flat. So it's a sphere. I don't know. What is it? It's whatever you want it to be, Ian.
Where does the time go?
I ask myself that all the time, to be honest. And you, especially as a director now, like, you go, oh my God, like, it's lunchtime and I still have all these scenes left to shoot. Where did the time go?
Why is a boxing ring square?
It's a good question, but the boxing, it's just a terminology, Ian. It's just a terminology. The squared circle.
Which apocalyptic dystopia is most possible? Zombies, cannibals, Mad Max, Hunger Games, Black Mirror?
Maybe Black Mirror. I think that's fairly. I think Black Mirror is probably the most likely option. Although there are elements to Hunger Games that might prove possible. I mean, it all depends on where we go. I mean, look what's going on in our society today, right? Like, I mean, the pitting of countries against one another, the China virus, I mean, all this nonsense. I mean, it's like this stuff, you can't even make this shit up, right?
Which one of those potential scenarios do you think you would thrive in?
Hunger Games.
Why?
My mantra is no is not an option. That's how I live my life. So I feel like I could excel in. I mean, I'm not physically abled, like I'm not like hugely in shape and stuff like that, but I think my intestinal fortitude would probably do me well.
Why are we here?
Where else would we be?
What does the world need most?
I think loving our fellow man. I think that I think especially during now, I mean, what this has shown us, this pandemic, is how much we need to look out for one another. And I think we've done that. And I think we're doing that on a much more regular basis than we ever have in my 57 years of my life. And I hope that we continue, once this pandemic is over, if it's ever over, I hope we continue that role of loving one another and supporting one another and respecting our fellow man, and no matter what the color of his or her skin is and things like that. I think that's what we need more than anything. We need to stick together.
Well, you heard it here, folks. Thank you very much, Avi Federgreen. You made it through the gauntlet. Thank you very much for joining me today, man. That was a lot of fun chatting, and just stick around here after I sign off for a second. And that's episode 19, everyone, with world-renowned producer Avi Federgreen, world-renowned distributor Avi Federgreen. And thank you very much for joining us. Take care. See you next time.